They mocked her in the showers, unaware of the authority she wielded beyond those tiled walls. Seconds later, their laughter transformed into stunned silence as they discovered she was their SEAL commander. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Steam swirled through the communal showers at the naval base in Coronado, California, creating a misty veil that Lieutenant Mary Chen wished could make her invisible. She entered quietly, her 5'4" frame aching from the day's brutal training. 8 hours of crawling through mud, scaling walls, and swimming in frigid ocean waters. Every muscle protested as she placed her toiletries on the small metal shelf and stepped under the hot spray. The whispers began immediately. Mary kept her eyes fixed on the tiled floor, watching water spiral toward the drain as she tried to ignore the sideways glances from the other women. She'd grown accustomed to this daily ritual of silent judgment and not-so-silent mockery. After 3 weeks of SEAL candidate training, the pattern was depressingly predictable. "Look who finally showed up," a voice cut through the steam. Mary didn't need to look up to know it belonged to Jennifer Smith. The tall, athletic blonde stood a full head above most trainees, her confidence as imposing as her physical presence. "I guess they'll let anyone into SEAL training these days, even if you barely weigh more than my backpack." Several women snickered. Jennifer had established herself as the unofficial alpha of their cohort, setting the tone for how others treated Mary. Since day one, she had made it abundantly clear that she believed Mary didn't belong. Mary focused on rinsing the mixture of sweat, sand, and salt from her dark hair. The grit from the beach obstacle course had worked its way everywhere, leaving her skin raw in places. She methodically shampooed twice, pretending not to hear as Jennifer continued her commentary. "Seriously though, what's the point? There's no way she'll make it through Hell Week. They should just cut her now and save everyone the trouble." Mary reached for her soap, her movements deliberate and controlled. She'd learned long ago that showing reaction only encouraged tormentors. Instead, she let her mind drift to the classified file locked in Chief Davis's office. The real reason she endured this daily humiliation. If they only knew. A few of the women looked uncomfortable with Jennifer's open hostility, but none intervened. In this pressure cooker environment, aligning yourself with the perceived weak link was tactical suicide. Mary understood the calculation all too well. As she rinsed off, Mary caught her own reflection in a small mirror on the wall. Behind the fatigue in her eyes lay a steely determination that none of her fellow trainees could possibly comprehend. She had survived far worse than petty insults in communal showers. Let them mock her. Let them underestimate her. It would make her job that much easier in the end. Carmen Garcia stood beside Jennifer, her arms crossed over her chest as she surveyed Mary with undisguised contempt. The steam from the showers couldn't mask the hostility radiating from the group of women. Carmen made no effort to lower her voice, ensuring everyone in the communal shower area could hear her mockery. "How's she supposed to carry a wounded teammate?" Carmen asked, her tone dripping with derision. "She looks like she should be teaching kindergarten, not training for special operations." Amanda Johnson nodded in agreement, her eyes cold as ice as they swept over Mary's smaller frame. "This program has standards for a reason," she said firmly. "Lowering them to be politically correct just puts us all at risk in the field." She gestured vaguely toward Mary with a dismissive flick of her wrist. "When lives are on the line, physical capability matters." Several other trainees glanced over, some with curiosity, others with similar skepticism in their eyes. The naval base at Coronado had always been a proving ground, but for women attempting to break into elite units, the scrutiny was twice as intense. Mary Chen kept her face carefully neutral as she continued rinsing the sand from her hair. She'd heard variations of these comments throughout her military career. Too small, too weak, too feminine. The words should have lost their sting by now, but they still cut deep, especially coming from fellow women who should have been allies rather than adversaries. I heard she barely passed the strength requirements, Carmen continued, speaking loudly enough for her voice to echo off the tiled walls. They probably gave her extra chances because they needed diversity numbers. Mary closed her eyes briefly, remembering the grueling tests she'd not only passed but excelled at, tests these women knew nothing about. She thought of night operations in countries whose names never appeared in her official record, of wounded comrades she'd carried through terrain far more treacherous than any training course. "You know what happens when standards slip?" Amanda asked the small gathering. "People die. It's that simple." Mary turned off the shower and reached for her towel, her movements deliberate and controlled. She had faced this same skepticism, this same dismissal countless times before, always from people who had no idea what she was truly capable of, what she had already accomplished. As she wrapped the towel around herself, Mary caught her own reflection in a small mirror on the wall. Behind the calm exterior, her eyes held the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing to prove, yet everything to hide. For now, she would endure their judgment. The mission demanded it. "Maybe you should consider transferring to admin," Jennifer sneered as Mary wrapped her towel around herself and finally met her gaze. The shower room fell silent for a heartbeat as Mary's calm, unwavering eyes met Jennifer's. Steam continued to billow around them, creating an almost theatrical backdrop to the confrontation. Several women paused mid-rinse, sensing the tension crackling between the two. Lieutenant Mary Chen secured her towel with practiced efficiency, her movements betraying none of the anger that might have been justified by the constant barrage of insults. Jennifer Smith stood with her weight shifted to one hip, water droplets cascading down her athletic frame, clearly expecting Mary to shrink away as she had done in previous encounters. The blonde's confidence was palpable. She'd established herself as the alpha of their training group, and this moment was meant to reinforce that hierarchy. "I appreciate your concern," Mary replied, her voice steady and cool as steel. "But I'm exactly where I need to be." The tension was electric, and for a moment even the running water seemed to hush. Carmen and Amanda exchanged glances, surprised by the quiet defiance. They had grown accustomed to Mary's silence, mistaking it for weakness rather than the calculated restraint it truly was. Other trainees pretended to focus on their shower routines while stealing furtive glances at the standoff. Jennifer's eyes narrowed slightly, taken aback by the unexpected response. She'd anticipated either meek acceptance or defensive anger, not this composed certainty that somehow made her feel like she was the one being evaluated. For just a fraction of a second, doubt flickered across her face. "We'll see about that when you wash out next week," she finally responded. But her voice lacked its usual conviction. The moment stretched between them, punctuated only by the rhythmic dripping of showerheads and the soft squeak of wet feet against tile. Mary simply nodded once, maintaining eye contact for precisely 3 more seconds, long enough to make her point without escalating the confrontation. Then she turned away, gathering her toiletries with unhurried movements. The naval base's communal showers had witnessed countless power struggles over the years, but few with such understated intensity. As Mary walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing slightly on the wet floor, the other women gradually resumed their conversations, though noticeably quieter than before. Something had shifted in the atmosphere, an almost imperceptible rebalancing of power that left everyone slightly unsettled. What none of them could see was the slight tightening of Mary's jaw as she pushed through the door, the only outward sign of the determination that burned beneath her carefully maintained composure. Jennifer rolled her eyes, refusing to be rattled by Mary's composure. Steam continued to swirl around them, creating a hazy backdrop to their confrontation. The blonde trainee planted her feet firmly on the wet tiles, towering over Mary Chen with practiced intimidation. "Tell me," Jennifer demanded, her voice dripping with condescension, "what makes you think you can handle missions that have broken men twice your size? What makes you think you deserve to be here?" Mary stood perfectly still, water droplets tracing paths down her shoulders. Behind her calm exterior, memories flashed, classified operations in hostile territories, decisions that had saved lives, and losses that still haunted her nights. But none of this could be shared. The lieutenant considered her answer carefully, suppressing a lifetime of stories and scars that would have silenced the room. "I guess we'll find out during training, won't we?" she answered, voice unwavering as steel. Her response wasn't what Jennifer had expected. No defensiveness, no anger, just quiet confidence. Carmen Garcia stepped forward, her dark hair slicked back from the shower. "Yeah, but real combat is different," she interjected, raising her voice to ensure everyone in the communal space heard. "When lives are on the line, do you think your team will trust someone like you?" The words echoed against the tiled walls, each syllable meant to dig deeper under Mary's skin. Several other trainees paused their routines, pretending not to watch, while clearly absorbing every moment of the confrontation. The tension in the steamy room thickened as Mary maintained eye contact with Carmen, neither woman willing to back down. "Trust is earned," Mary finally replied, reaching for her towel with deliberate movements. "And judgment before evidence is just prejudice." Amanda Johnson snorted from her position beside Jennifer. "Evidence is what we see right in front of us," she said coldly, gesturing at Mary's smaller frame. "This isn't about fairness, it's about capability. When someone's bleeding out in enemy territory, physical strength isn't optional." Mary wrapped the towel around herself methodically, her fingers steady despite the barrage. She had faced worse interrogations than this, from actual enemies rather than misguided colleagues. The irony wasn't lost on her that these women had no idea they were questioning the judgment of their commanding officer. "Physical strength comes in many forms," Mary said quietly. "So does courage." She gathered her shower supplies, aware that every woman in the room was evaluating her response, measuring her worthiness through this exchange. The confrontation had accomplished exactly what Jennifer, Carmen, and Amanda intended, establishing Mary as an outsider, someone to be questioned and doubted. What they couldn't know was how familiar this territory was to her, and how little their opinion would matter when the truth finally emerged. Amanda Johnson let out a derisive laugh that echoed against the tiled walls. "I bet she's only here because of some diversity quota." The Navy probably just wanted to check a box. Her words hung in the steamy air, sharp and cutting. Mary Chen finished drying off, each movement deliberate and controlled. Though her face remained impassive, the barbs struck deeper than she would ever let them see. She'd heard similar comments throughout her career, always the assumption that her presence was political rather than earned. The lieutenant folded her towel with military precision, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her rattled. 3 more trainees entered the communal showers, their conversations dying as they sensed the tension. They glanced between Mary and the trio of antagonists, quickly averting their eyes and finding spots as far from the confrontation as possible. One whispered something to another, both stealing glances at the petite officer who had become the target of the day's ridicule. The shower room was filling now, the audience to Mary's humiliation growing by the minute. Some women stopped to watch, curiosity and discomfort evident in their expressions. Others busied themselves with their routines, scrubbing with unnecessary vigor, pretending the tension wasn't thick enough to cut with a knife. Not a single voice rose in her defense. Mary hadn't expected support. In training environments like this, survival often meant keeping your head down, avoiding becoming collateral damage in someone else's war. She understood their silence. It was tactical, not personal. The lieutenant had learned long ago that true strength sometimes meant standing alone. As she laced up her boots, Mary caught her own reflection in a fogged mirror. Behind her, she could see Jennifer Smith whispering something to Carmen, both of them watching her with undisguised contempt. The smaller woman straightened her uniform with practiced movements, her fingers steady despite the emotional assault. A new trainee entered, hesitating at the doorway as she assessed the scene. For a moment, it seemed she might say something, but then she caught Amanda's cold stare and quickly moved to a far corner of the room. The message was clear: challenging the established hierarchy carried consequences. Mary gathered her toiletries, tucking them into her standard issue bag, each item in its place, each movement efficient. Control in the small things when the bigger picture felt chaotic. She'd weathered worse storms than this, faced deadlier opponents than 3 arrogant trainees. This was just another test, another obstacle to overcome with the quiet resilience that had carried her through missions her tormentors couldn't begin to imagine. Carmen Garcia raised her voice, making sure everyone in the communal showers heard her declaration. "We all know she doesn't belong here. It's nothing personal, just reality." Her words hung in the steamy air, intended to cut deep. Several women nodded in agreement, while others pretended to be absorbed in their routines. Mary Chen said nothing as she methodically laced up her boots, her fingers working with practiced precision. The lieutenant's silence carried more weight than any heated response could have. She'd heard similar dismissals throughout her career. Each time, she'd let her actions speak instead of engaging in pointless arguments. "You know I'm right," Carmen continued, emboldened by Mary's silence. "The standards exist for a reason. In real combat situations, physical strength matters." Jennifer Smith stepped closer, her tall, athletic frame towering over Mary. Water dripped from her blonde hair as she invaded the smaller woman's personal space, a deliberate intimidation tactic. "I've been top of every exercise since training began," Jennifer boasted, her voice carrying the confidence of someone accustomed to dominance. "Never failed a single test. Can you say the same?" Her eyes narrowed, searching for any sign of weakness. Mary finally looked up, her gaze unflinching, despite the height difference between them. The room grew quieter as the confrontation intensified. "I'm still here, just like you," Mary replied, her voice steady and measured. "That should tell you something." She stood, adjusting her uniform with calm precision. The air bristled with unspoken challenge. Several trainees exchanged glances, surprised by the smaller woman's composure when the face of such direct confrontation. Amanda Johnson moved to stand beside Jennifer, crossing her arms. "Being here doesn't mean you belong here. The instructors are probably just waiting for you to wash out on your own." Mary gathered her belongings, her movements unhurried. "Interesting theory," she responded, her tone neutral but firm. "I guess we'll see who's still standing at the end of training." Lisa Park, who had been quietly observing from nearby, caught Mary's eye briefly. There was something like respect in her glance. Not quite support, but acknowledgement of Mary's resilience. "This isn't some office job where everyone gets a participation trophy," Jennifer said, her frustration growing at Mary's refusal to be rattled. "People's lives depend on everyone pulling their weight." Mary shouldered her bag and walked toward the exit. "On that point," she said, pausing at the doorway, "we completely agree." She left the shower room, the heavy door closing behind her with a definitive thud. Jennifer scoffed, her blonde hair still dripping as she towered over Mary. "It just means the instructors are going easy on you. That won't last. Eventually, you'll be gone." Her voice carried across the steamy shower room, ensuring everyone heard. The stares of dozens of women pressed in, hungry for drama, their eyes shifting between the tall, confident trainee and the smaller woman who refused to be intimidated. Mary Chen simply nodded, her expression revealing nothing of the storm inside. "I guess we'll see." The lieutenant maintained the same calm demeanor that had carried her through situations far more threatening than a shower room confrontation. Carmen Garcia leaned against the tiled wall, arms crossed. "First one to drop out buys drinks for everyone else. My money's on Chen not lasting the week." A few nervous laughs rippled through the room. "I don't make bets I can't collect on," Mary replied, her voice steady as she finished dressing. She methodically laced her boots, each movement precise and economical. habits ingrained through years of training that none of these women knew about. Amanda Johnson stepped forward, her cold eyes narrowed. "This isn't personal, Chen. It's about standards, about trust. In combat, we need to know the person beside us can pull their weight." Mary stood, now fully dressed in her uniform. Though several inches shorter than her antagonists, something in her posture made the gap seem insignificant. "Trust is earned in action, not words," she said quietly. "Tomorrow's another day." She turned and strode toward the exit, feeling the weight of every stare on her back. The taunts followed her, whispers about quotas and special treatment, about how she'd crack under real pressure. Each step Mary took was a testament to quiet resilience, her shoulders straight, her gait unwavering. Outside, the cool California evening air hit her face as she walked across the naval base. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in fierce oranges and reds. Mary paused for a moment, allowing herself a deep breath. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, the obstacle course at dawn, underwater training at noon, marksmanship in the afternoon. The same grueling schedule designed to break even the strongest candidates. But Lieutenant Chen had faced worse and survived. Much worse. The women in that shower room couldn't possibly know about the nights she'd spent in hostile territory, the missions that had tested not just her physical limits, but her very humanity. They couldn't know about the decisions she'd made that had saved lives, or the ones that had cost them. Mary continued toward the barracks, her mind already preparing for tomorrow's battles, both physical and psychological. Let them underestimate her. It wouldn't be the first time, nor would it be the last. What none of them knew was that Lieutenant Mary Chen carried secrets beneath her composed exterior. Secrets that would fundamentally alter everything they thought they knew about her. Her personnel file, accessible only to those with the highest clearance levels, contained redacted missions and commendations that would silence every whisper of doubt. But that wasn't why she was here. There was something else, something that required her to blend in rather than stand out. The next morning, Mary arrived at the training facility well before dawn, the cool Coronado air carrying the familiar scent of salt and seaweed. She stood alone on the beach, watching the Pacific's dark waves crash against the shore as the first hints of light touched the horizon. Her muscles still ached from yesterday's drills, but her mind was already locked onto the coming test, an exercise that would push everyone to their physical and mental limits. She performed her pre-training ritual methodically, stretching each muscle group, centering her breathing, and visualizing success. The lieutenant had learned long ago that preparation wasn't just physical, it was psychological warfare against your own doubts. By the time other trainees began trickling in, word of the shower confrontation had spread throughout the base like wildfire. Mary noticed the sideways glances, the hushed conversations that stopped when she walked by. Jennifer Smith and her allies, Carmen Garcia and Amanda Johnson, made no effort to hide their disdain, loudly discussing how the day's team exercises would expose the weak links. Lisa Park nodded politely as she passed Mary, a small acknowledgement that stood out amid the cold shoulders. Rachel Thompson even offered a quiet morning before joining her assigned group. These small gestures, while appreciated, didn't change the fact that Mary had become a lightning rod for controversy in the program. She secured her gear methodically, checking each piece of equipment with practiced precision. The woman had never sought attention. Quite the opposite. Her entire career had been built on blending in, observing, and acting only when necessary. The scrutiny now directed her way was an unwelcome complication. As Chief Davis strode onto the training ground, barking orders that sent trainees scrambling into formation, Mary took her position with quiet confidence. She was here for a reason, a mission known only to her, and a select few at the highest levels of command. The others could speculate all they wanted about her qualifications or background, but they had no idea what she was truly capable of, or why she had been inserted into this particular training group. And that Lieutenant Commander Chen reflected as she fell into formation, was precisely the point. Chief Petty Officer Robert Davis's voice cut through the early morning fog like a knife, his commanding presence immediately silencing the group of trainees gathered on the damp sand. The ocean breeze carried the salt spray as he outlined the day's challenge. "Today's exercise will test your ability to work as a team under pressure," he announced, pacing before them with military precision. "You'll carry a wounded teammate through the obstacle course. The fastest team wins weekend leave." The trainees exchanged glances, some excited by the prospect of freedom, others calculating the physical demands ahead. Lieutenant Mary Chen scanned the posted squad assignments, her stomach tightening as she read the names. She'd been grouped with Jennifer Smith, Carmen Garcia, Amanda Johnson, and two others, Lisa Park and Rachel Thompson, both of whom had maintained neutrality during the previous day's confrontation in the showers. Lisa, a compact woman with analytical eyes, was already studying the course layout, while Rachel, tall with a quiet demeanor, simply nodded acknowledgement to Mary. At least they weren't openly hostile. Jennifer spotted the list and made no attempt to hide her displeasure. Her athletic frame tensed as she groaned loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Great, we're stuck with the weak link," she announced, making a show of looking Mary up and down dismissively. Several other trainees glanced their way, some with sympathy, others with barely concealed amusement. The tension from yesterday's shower room confrontation still hung in the air, amplified by the competitive nature of today's challenge. Carmen approached, adjusting her uniform with practiced efficiency. "Don't worry," she said to Jennifer, deliberately loud enough for Mary to overhear. "We can compensate for her limitations." Amanda joined them, her cold eyes assessing Mary as if calculating exactly how much of a liability she would be. Chief Davis said teamwork under pressure. "This certainly qualifies," she remarked dryly. Mary remained silent, mentally mapping the obstacle course instead of engaging. She noted the 12-foot wall, the underwater tunnel, and the shooting range positioned strategically uphill. Each element was designed to test different skills and expose different weaknesses. Chief Davis blew his whistle, signaling the teams to gather their equipment. "You have 5 minutes to strategize," he called out. "Choose your wounded teammate wisely." As the group huddled, Jennifer immediately took charge. "Carmen will be our wounded teammate. She's lightest after Mary, but unlike Mary, the rest of us can actually carry her weight." Mary absorbed the insult without reaction, focusing instead on the mission parameters. She had faced worse than Jennifer Smith's contempt, and today would provide the perfect opportunity to show exactly what she was capable of, without revealing too much. Carmen Garcia smirked, tossing her dark hair over her shoulder. "When she slows us down, we'll just leave her behind. That's what would happen in real combat anyway." Her words carried across the training ground, deliberately loud enough for Mary to hear. Lisa Park glanced at the obstacle course, her eyes calculating distances and angles. Unlike the others, she seemed more interested in strategy than participating in the ongoing drama. "We should focus on the fastest way through the mud pit," she suggested, pointing toward the third obstacle. Amanda Johnson shook her head dismissively. "The strategy is simple. 5 of us do the work, and Chen tries to keep up." She adjusted her uniform with practiced precision, shooting a cold glance toward Mary. "That's the only way we'll have a chance at weekend leave." As the team continued discussing their approach, Lieutenant Mary Chen stood slightly apart, observing not just her own team, but the other squads preparing around them. While Jennifer Smith loudly detailed how they should carry Carmen through the course, Mary's experienced eyes caught details the others missed. The slightly worn handholds on the left side of the climbing wall that would provide better grip, the most efficient carrying positions that would distribute weight without straining the bearers, and the subtle slope of the rope climb that favored a specific technique. Years of classified missions and advanced training had taught Mary to see what others overlooked. She noted how Team 3 was already struggling with their formation, how Team 5 had positioned their strongest members incorrectly. These were the kinds of observations that had kept her alive in situations her current teammates couldn't begin to imagine. "Jen, are you even listening?" Jennifer called out, her tall figure imposing as she approached. "We're assigning positions." "You'll be at the back where you can do the least damage," Mary nodded quietly. "Whatever works best for the team," she replied, her voice betraying nothing of her thoughts. Rachel Thompson, standing nearby, gave Mary a curious look. "You seem pretty calm about all this," she observed quietly, while the others continued planning. Mary offered a small smile. "I've faced worse obstacles than this course," she answered simply, leaving Rachel wondering what exactly that meant. As Chief Petty Officer Davis approached to give final instructions, Mary took a deep breath. She knew exactly how to navigate every challenge ahead, not just the physical obstacles, but the far more complex challenge of maintaining her cover while proving her worth. The irony wasn't lost on her. The woman they mocked as the weakest link was actually the most experienced soldier among them. The whistle would blow soon, and then they would see what she was truly capable of. The shrill blast of the whistle cut through the morning air, and Jennifer Smith's team launched into action. Carmen Garcia lay across their shoulders in the simulated wounded position, her body rigid as they navigated the first set of wooden barriers. Mary Chen kept pace, her movements efficient and precise, despite the weight distribution being clearly uneven among the team. "Keep it tight," Jennifer called out, her voice commanding as they cleared the third obstacle. The team moved with practiced coordination, earning approving nods from the instructors watching nearby. Lisa Park maintained steady breathing while Rachel Thompson adjusted her grip on Carmen's left leg. Even Amanda Johnson seemed impressed with their progress, a rare smile breaking through her typically stern expression. Their confidence carried them across the mud pit and through the tire field, but everything changed when they reached the 12-foot wall. The smooth wooden surface loomed before them, with only a single rope hanging down the center. "I'll take point," Jennifer announced, positioning herself to hoist Carmen upward. The tall blonde strained, muscles trembling as she attempted to lift her teammate while maintaining her own grip on the rope. Carmen's eyes widened in alarm as she felt herself slipping. "I'm losing her," Jennifer gasped, her fingers cramping around the coarse rope. The weight was shifting dangerously, and Carmen let out a small cry of fear as her body tilted backward. Without hesitation, Mary moved into position. Her small frame belied her strength as she stabilized Carmen's torso with one arm while her other hand reinforced Jennifer's grip on the rope. The lieutenant's movements were fluid, almost instinctive, revealing years of muscle memory that went far beyond basic training. "Push from the lower back," Mary instructed quietly, guiding the team through the maneuver. "Lisa, support her left side. Rachel, maintain tension on the rope." With Mary's assistance, they successfully transferred Carmen over the wall. The team regrouped on the other side, breathing heavily but intact. Jennifer wiped sweat from her brow, glancing at Mary with unmistakable irritation rather than appreciation. The help had been necessary, even life-saving in a real-world scenario, but accepting it clearly wounded her pride. "I had it under control," Jennifer muttered, adjusting her uniform. Mary simply nodded, not engaging with the obvious falsehood. "We should keep moving. The underwater tunnel is next." Amanda exchanged looks with Carmen, who was still catching her breath after the near fall. For a brief moment, something like respect flickered in Carmen's eyes as she regarded the smaller woman, but it vanished when Jennifer shot her a warning glance. The team moved forward toward the next challenge, the dynamics between them shifting imperceptibly. Mary remained focused on the mission, knowing that each obstacle revealed more than just physical capability. It exposed the truth about who could be trusted when lives hung in the balance. The underwater tunnel loomed ahead, a 20-foot stretch of frigid darkness that would test their limits. Mary Chen assessed the obstacle with practiced calm, while the rest of the team caught their breath. The exercise required them to carry Carmen Garcia through the submerged passage while maintaining their composure. A simulation of extracting an injured teammate from a flooded zone. "I'll take point," Jennifer announced, positioning herself at Carmen's head. "Amanda and Lisa, take the sides. Mary, you and Rachel support from behind." They lowered themselves into the icy water, the shock of cold stealing their breath. Carmen lay rigid on their makeshift stretcher, playing the role of an unconscious teammate perfectly. The women took deep breaths before submerging completely into the murky tunnel. The first few seconds went according to plan. Jennifer led confidently, her powerful strokes cutting through the water. But halfway through, when the tunnel dipped unexpectedly, her grip faltered. Mary noticed the subtle change in Jennifer's body language, the slight tensing of shoulders, the momentary hesitation. Years of underwater operations had taught her to read these signs. Carmen's eyes suddenly widened in panic as water rushed into her mouth. The stretcher tilted dangerously, threatening to send their wounded teammates sinking to the bottom. Amanda struggled to compensate, her movements becoming frantic, while Lisa fought to maintain her position. Without hesitation, Mary propelled herself forward. Her movements were fluid and precise, betraying none of the amateur status she'd been pretending to maintain. She smoothly took over Jennifer's position, stabilizing Carmen's head above water in the small air pocket at the tunnel's ceiling. With subtle hand signals, ones not taught in basic training, she redirected the team's formation. The lieutenant commander guided them through the remainder of the tunnel with the assured confidence of someone who had navigated far more treacherous waters. When they finally emerged into daylight, the team collapsed onto the platform, coughing and gasping. Carmen sputtered water, her face pale from the near-drowning experience. "What happened back there?" Chief Davis demanded. Towering over the soaked trainees, Lisa Park pushed wet hair from her face, her assessment direct and unembellished. "Mary saved the exercise," she stated, glancing at the smallest member of their team with newfound respect. "When Jennifer lost her grip, Mary took over and got us through." Jennifer Smith bristled visibly at the comment, her jaw tightening as water dripped from her blonde hair. But for once, she remained silent, unable to dispute the obvious truth. Her eyes narrowed as she studied Mary, who was quietly helping Carmen recover, showing no signs of the exertion that had left the others winded. The chief's gaze lingered on Mary, his expression unreadable as he made notes on his clipboard. The final obstacle loomed ahead, a steep, muddy hill with shooting stations positioned at intervals. At the summit, 5 targets stood like sentinels against the California sky. Chief Petty Officer Davis watched with arms crossed as the team regrouped, still carrying Carmen Garcia on their makeshift stretcher. 5 shots each, he barked. Miss more than 2, and your whole team repeats the course tomorrow at 0400. Jennifer Smith stepped up first, adjusting her grip on the military-issue rifle. Her hands trembled slightly, betraying the fatigue from the underwater tunnel. She positioned herself, exhaled, and fired. The first shot hit the outer ring. The second missed entirely. Frustration flashed across her face as she missed another, before finally landing her last 2 shots. 3 out of 5, Smith. Disappointing, Davis commented, making notes on his clipboard. Carmen took her turn next, after being temporarily relieved from stretcher duty. Her performance mirrored Jennifer's, inconsistent and clearly affected by the morning's exertion. Amanda Johnson fared only marginally better, landing 3 shots, but missing the center ring completely. "You're all shooting like it's your first day," Chief Davis remarked dryly. "This is basic marksmanship under pressure, people." Lisa Park surprised everyone by hitting 4 out of 5 targets, including 2 perfect center shots. Rachel Thompson managed 3 solid hits, earning a nod of approval from the instructor. When Mary Chen's turn came, Jennifer rolled her eyes. "Try not to embarrass us completely," she whispered, loud enough for the team to hear. Mary said nothing as she accepted the rifle. Her transformation was immediate and subtle. Her stance shifted, her breathing regulated, her eyes focused with laser precision. The first shot cracked through the air, striking dead center. Without pause, she fired again. Another perfect hit. 3, 4, 5 shots followed in methodical succession, each finding the bullseye with unerring accuracy. A hush fell over the training ground. Other teams paused their exercises to watch as Mary calmly lowered the weapon and handed it back to the range officer. 5 for 5, all center mass, Chief Davis announced, his voice betraying a hint of admiration. That's how it's done, recruits. Jennifer stared at Mary, confusion and suspicion replacing her earlier contempt. Lisa whispered to Rachel, "Where does someone learn to shoot like that?" Mary rejoined the team without comment, helping to lift Carmen as they continued their ascent. Her face remained impassive, but for the first time since training began, the others looked at her differently, not with derision, but with growing questions about who Lieutenant Chen really was. Chief Petty Officer Robert Davis approached the exhausted team, his weathered face revealing nothing as his gaze locked onto Mary. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the training ground, highlighting the sweat-drenched uniforms of the women who had just completed the grueling exercise. "Someone on this team has had advanced training," Davis announced, his voice carrying the weight of decades of military experience. The statement hung in the air, neither accusation nor compliment. Jennifer Smith straightened her posture, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "Thank you, Chief. I wasn't talking to you, Smith." Davis cut her off sharply, not even bothering to look in her direction. Jennifer's expression crumpled, the unexpected dismissal leaving her momentarily speechless as Carmen and Amanda exchanged uncomfortable glances. The chief's full attention remained fixed on Mary Chen, studying her with the careful scrutiny of someone who had seen countless recruits pass through training, and who could spot inconsistencies from a mile away. The other trainees fell silent, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "What's your background, Chen?" he asked, his tone deceptively casual. The question carried layers of meaning that everyone present could feel. Mary maintained perfect composure, her breathing steady despite having just completed the physically demanding course. "Standard military training, sir. Nothing special," she replied carefully, her voice betraying nothing. Lisa Park shifted her weight from one foot to another, watching the interaction with growing interest. Rachel Thompson kept her eyes down, seemingly uncomfortable with the tension building around them. Davis's eyes narrowed slightly, the only indication that he wasn't satisfied with her answer. He studied her stance, the way she held herself even in exhaustion, the telltale signs that separated those with basic training from specialists with years of advanced experience. "Is that so?" he finally responded, his tone making it clear he didn't believe her for a second. Interesting how standard training produces that level of marksmanship, or that underwater confidence. Mary held his gaze without flinching. "Some people just take to certain skills naturally, sir." The chief nodded slowly, a barely perceptible smile touching his lips. "Some people do," he agreed, though his expression suggested he knew there was much more to the story. "Dismissed for now. Hit the showers and be ready for night exercises at 2100 hours." As Davis walked away, Jennifer glared at Mary with renewed suspicion, the humiliation of being dismissed still fresh. The quiet lieutenant had just become an even bigger mystery, one that Jennifer seemed determined to solve, no matter the cost. That evening, the atmosphere in the mess hall was tense. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the metal tables. As Lieutenant Mary Chen entered, tray in hand, conversations abruptly halted, replaced by hushed whispers and sidelong glances. Her performance during the day's training exercise had transformed her from an object of ridicule to one of suspicious curiosity. Mary found an empty table and sat alone, methodically arranging her meal. She could feel the weight of stares from across the room, particularly from the corner where Jennifer Smith huddled with her allies. The lieutenant maintained her composure, focusing on her food rather than the whispers that carried fragments of speculation about her unexpected skills. She was halfway through her meal when Jennifer approached, flanked by Carmen Garcia and Amanda Johnson. Without invitation, The tall blonde slid onto the bench across from Mary, while her companions positioned themselves on either side, effectively boxing her in. "We need to talk," Jennifer said, her voice carrying just enough to attract attention from nearby tables. Her blue eyes narrowed with suspicion. How does someone who supposedly struggles with basics become an expert marksman and underwater specialist overnight? Mary took another bite, chewing deliberately before answering. "I never claimed to struggle with basics." "Cut the crap," Carmen interjected, leaning forward. "We've all seen you during training. You've been holding back, pretending to be average, until today." Amanda's cold stare fixed on Mary. "Who are you really, Mary?" she pressed, emphasizing her name as if it were fabricated. "Because nobody develops that level of precision without years of specialized training." Mary set down her fork, meeting each woman's gaze in turn. "Perhaps you made assumptions based on incomplete information." Jennifer scoffed. "Or perhaps you've been playing us all from the beginning." She lowered her voice, though the surrounding tables had gone quiet, straining to hear. "The way you handled that underwater section wasn't beginner's luck. And those shots, 5 for 5 under pressure, that's not standard training." "Is there a problem with performing well?" Mary asked, her calm demeanor unshaken. "The problem," Amanda said, "is authenticity. We're all here putting everything on the line while you've been hiding your true capabilities." Her eyes narrowed. "It makes us wonder what else you're hiding." Mary took a sip of water. Aware that nearly every eye in the mess hall was now fixed on their table, the confrontation was drawing attention she'd hoped to avoid. But the day's events had accelerated things. Her carefully constructed cover was beginning to unravel, thread by thread. "Everyone has their reasons for being here," she replied evenly. "Mine are my own." Mary kept her voice even, maintaining the same composure she'd shown throughout the entire training program. "Maybe you just underestimated me." Her dark eyes remained steady, refusing to flinch under the intensity of their scrutiny. Jennifer Smith scoffed, tossing her blonde hair over her shoulder. "We're not stupid, Chen. You've been hiding something since day one." She leaned forward across the metal mess hall table, lowering her voice. "Where were you stationed before this? Why won't you talk about your past?" The lieutenant felt the walls closing in. Every question was a potential trap. Her official records had been carefully sanitized, her true assignments classified at levels these women couldn't imagine. Years of covert operations had taught Mary to maintain her cover, but she hadn't expected this level of investigation from fellow trainees. "My service record is my business, just like yours is yours," she replied, taking a measured sip from her water bottle. The cool liquid contrasted with the heat of tension surrounding their table. Amanda pointed her fork accusingly. "Except we've all shared our stories. I told everyone about my deployment to Afghanistan. Carmen talked about her time on the carrier. Even quiet Rachel shared her background." The cold-eyed trainee narrowed her gaze. "You've never talked about yours." Mary carefully placed her water bottle down. "Not everyone's military experience is the same. That's exactly our point," Jennifer insisted, frustration evident in her voice. "Your performance today, the shooting, the underwater maneuvers, those aren't basic skills. Those are advanced techniques that take years to perfect." Carmen Garcia nodded in agreement. "I have 3 brothers in Special Forces. The way you handled that rifle, that's not standard training." Mary glanced around the mess hall, noting how other trainees were pretending not to listen while clearly hanging on every word. The naval-based dining facility had become an impromptu interrogation room, with her at the center. "Look," Mary said finally, "we're all here for the same reason, to serve our country. Does it really matter where I trained before?" "It matters if you're lying," Jennifer replied. "It matters if you're not who you say you are." Lisa Park, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. "Your shooting stance was textbook special operations. I noticed it immediately." Mary's mind raced through her options. Her mission parameters were clear: maintain cover until the appropriate time. But these women were sharper than her superiors had anticipated. Every instinct, honed through years of command, told her that complete stonewalling would only intensify their suspicions. "Everyone has parts of their past they don't discuss," Mary said carefully. "Respect that boundary, and I'll respect yours." Rachel Thompson, the quietest member of their group, leaned forward slightly. Her voice was soft, but carried across the table with unexpected clarity. Maybe she has her reasons. Not everyone wants to share their whole life story. She glanced at Mary with something resembling empathy. Some experiences are personal. Jennifer tossed her blonde hair back, eyes narrowing. This isn't about privacy. It's about trust. She slammed her palm on the metal table, causing trays to rattle. How can we rely on someone who won't even tell us where she's been? In combat, your life depends on knowing your team. Lisa nodded reluctantly. She has a point. We've all shared our backgrounds, where we trained, our specialties. The strategic thinker seemed torn between curiosity and respect for boundaries. Mary sat perfectly still, her posture betraying nothing of the internal calculation happening behind her calm exterior. Years of training had taught her to maintain composure under interrogation. But these weren't enemy combatants, they were potential teammates. "Look," Amanda interjected, leaning closer. "We've seen how you handle yourself in water. The way you shoot. Those aren't skills you pick up in basic." Her cold eyes studied Mary's face for any reaction. "You move like someone with field experience, not just training." Carmen crossed her arms. "If you're hiding something that affects the team, we deserve to know. Period." The mess hall's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as conversations at nearby tables quieted. Other trainees were watching now, drawn to the confrontation like sharks to blood in the water. Mary's patience finally cracked. Just a hairline fracture in her carefully maintained facade. "What matters is whether I can do the job," she said, her voice low but firm. "Today proved I can." She met each woman's gaze in turn. "I carried my weight. I hit my targets. I helped complete the mission." "Today proved you've been lying to us," Carmen shot back, her dark eyes flashing with accusation. "You've been sandbagging, making yourself look weaker than you are. Why would anyone do that unless they had something to hide?" Rachel shifted uncomfortably. "Does it really matter as long as—" "Yes, it matters," Jennifer cut her off. "This program is about more than physical ability. It's about integrity." The tall blonde leaned across the table until her face was inches from Mary's. "And integrity means honesty." Mary took a slow, deliberate breath. The walls were closing in. Her cover story had served its purpose, but it was wearing thin. Soon, she would need to make a choice: continue the charade or reveal enough truth to maintain her position without compromising her actual mission. "You want honesty?" Mary finally said. "Fine, but you might not like what you hear." Chief Petty Officer Robert Davis appeared at their table, his commanding presence immediately silencing the mess hall. The veteran instructor's weathered face betrayed nothing as he surveyed the tense gathering. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice carrying the weight of authority that had broken countless recruits over the years. Jennifer Smith stood her ground, shoulders squared in defiance. "We were just asking Chen about her background, sir. There are inconsistencies that concern us as a team." The chief's gaze shifted between the women, lingering momentarily on each face before settling on Mary. The small lieutenant sat calmly, her composure unshaken despite the interrogation she'd been enduring. "Would you like to address their concerns, Chen?" Davis asked, his tone neutral, but his eyes sharp with assessment. Mary hesitated, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. The mess hall had fallen completely silent, conversations abandoned as everyone strained to hear her response. She knew this moment would come eventually, the inevitable collision between her cover and her mission. "My previous assignments are classified, sir. I'm not authorized to discuss them," she finally replied, her voice steady despite the tension crackling through the air. A hush fell over the room. Classified assignments meant something entirely different in a place like this. In the world of special operations, those words carried implications that everyone present understood. Carmen's eyes widened slightly, while Amanda's narrowed with suspicion. Rachel and Lisa exchanged glances, reassessing everything they thought they knew about their quiet teammate. Jennifer leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Classified? You expect us to believe that? What kind of game are you playing?" Chief Davis raised his hand, cutting off further questioning. "That's enough, Smith. If Lieutenant Chen says her record is classified, then it is." His tone left no room for argument. The instructor's gaze swept across the gathered trainees. This program demands more than physical strength. It requires trust in the chain of command and respect for operational security. If you can't handle that basic concept, perhaps you're in the wrong place. Several women shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Mary remained still, her face revealing nothing, though her mind raced through contingency plans. The mission parameters were changing rapidly, and she would need to adapt. Davis turned back to Mary. "Report to my office at 2100 hours, Lieutenant." He emphasized her rank slightly, a subtle acknowledgement that registered with everyone present. As he walked away, the silence persisted for several heartbeats before conversations slowly resumed, now hushed and focused on what had just transpired. The word classified hung in the air like smoke, changing everything. Chief Davis nodded firmly, his weathered face revealing nothing of his thoughts. "That's enough for tonight. Smith, Garcia, Johnson, return to your tables." His tone left no room for argument. The three women retreated, but their faces burned with unresolved suspicion. Jennifer shot one last glare at Mary before turning away, her tall frame rigid with frustration. Carmen whispered something to Amanda as they walked back, both occasionally glancing over their shoulders. Mary exhaled slowly, grateful for the momentary reprieve. She pushed her untouched food aside, appetite gone. The weight of maintaining her cover felt heavier with each passing day. Every interaction was a calculated risk, every response measured against what a regular trainee might say or do. Later that evening, as darkness settled over the naval base, Mary received a message to report to Davis's office. The corridors were eerily quiet as she made her way through the facility, her footsteps echoing against the polished floors. Chief Davis was waiting behind his desk, a single lamp casting shadows across his face. He gestured to the chair opposite him without speaking. Mary sat, back straight, hands resting calmly on her knees. "I've been watching you," he said finally, breaking the silence. 20 years in this program, I've seen every kind of recruit. But you, is that?" He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "I know what advanced training looks like. Your record is redacted. You're not just a trainee, are you?" Mary's mind raced through her options. Her mission parameters were clear, but circumstances had changed. Before she could formulate a response, a noise from the hallway caught her attention. The unmistakable sound of breathing. The door swung open suddenly, revealing Jennifer, Carmen, and Amanda clustered in the doorway. They'd clearly been listening, their expressions a mixture of triumph and accusation. "We were right to be suspicious," Jennifer announced, stepping into the office uninvited. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, her stance confrontational. "You're some kind of spy, aren't you?" Carmen and Amanda flanked her like sentries, their faces hardened with distrust. The air in the small office grew thick with tension as Mary remained seated, outwardly calm, despite the intrusion. Davis rose from his chair, authority radiating from him. "This is a private meeting. How dare you?" "It's okay, Chief," Mary interrupted softly, her eyes never leaving the three women. The moment of truth had arrived sooner than expected, but perhaps it was time. The mission parameters would need to adjust. Mary faced them, her decision made. "You want the truth? The truth is classified at levels you don't even know exist." Jennifer laughed, but the hollow sound died quickly when she noticed Chief Davis's stern expression. "Chen, Permission granted for limited disclosure, the chief said, his voice carrying the weight of authority that silenced the room. Mary stood tall, her shoulders squared, transforming before their eyes from the quiet trainee they'd dismissed to someone entirely different. When she spoke, her voice carried a calm command that none of them had heard before. "I am Lieutenant Commander Mary Chen, commanding officer of SEAL Team 7. The woman you mocked in the showers, the teammate you thought didn't belong, has led more combat missions than anyone in this room." She paused, letting the words sink in. "And tonight there's still a spy to catch." Jennifer's face drained of color. Carmen took an involuntary step backward, while Amanda's mouth opened and closed without sound. The shock in the room was absolute. That's impossible," Jennifer finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Chief Davis cleared his throat. Lieutenant Commander Chen was inserted into this training group under deep cover to identify a security breach. Someone has been leaking classified information about our training protocols and mission parameters. Rachel and Lisa exchanged glances, their earlier neutrality suddenly seeming wise rather than passive. "For months, I've been tracking unusual communications patterns," Mary explained, her eyes scanning each face methodically. "The evidence pointed to someone in this training cohort." Amanda found her voice. "So everything, your struggles, the times you fell behind, it was all an act?" "Some of it," Mary admitted, "though carrying Garcia through that underwater tunnel wasn't exactly easy." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Carmen flushed deeply. "I don't understand. Why would a SEAL commander need to infiltrate a training program?" "Because sometimes the best place to hide is in plain sight," Mary answered, moving toward the computer on Davis's desk. "Someone thought I wouldn't be taken seriously, that I'd be overlooked because of my size, my gender. They were counting on your prejudice." She typed rapidly, bringing up a series of communication logs. "And they were right. While you were all busy mocking me, I was gathering evidence." The screen displayed a series of encrypted messages, timestamps matching training exercises. "Tonight we finish this," Mary said, her voice now unmistakably that of a commander. "And tomorrow, those of you who aren't implicated will continue training under my actual evaluation." Jennifer swallowed hard. "And if we are implicated?" Mary's eyes met hers directly. "Then you'll learn firsthand why enemies fear SEAL Team 7. The truth had finally shattered every misconception, and the real mission had just begun."